It's a great thing to know that you have a guide to the maritime sector because it helps you to understand what you need to do in case you want to invest in that sector or in case you want to have a profession there, plus other things. This is that guide. This is NIMASA This Week. Welcome. My name is Cordelia Obey. Today on the program, we'll be sharing with you the desire to ensure that Nigeria has her own shipping line. The committee in charge of making that happen paid a visit to NIMASA for consultation, and that committee was led by the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council, Barrister Hassan Bello.
The vision is to stimulate sustainable economic development in the maritime sector by attracting investment, expanding business activities, and creating jobs.
It wasn't a very pleasant visit, but it was one that had to be done. A solidarity visit by the heads of maritime agencies here in Nigeria to the headquarters of the Nigerian Ports Authority. It might interest you to know that during the protests, hoodlums had hijacked and they vandalized the headquarters of the NPA.
Our security personnel tried as much as they could, but they were overwhelmed. They in fact wrestled them and took away the AK-47, so they made away with some ammunition and things from the building.
And finally, we'll be sharing something with you from the legal advisor to NIMASA and secretary to the governing board of that agency, Barrister Victor Egejuru. He shed more light on the SPOMO Act. More about it, you definitely will find out. Welcome. This is NIMASA This Week. Let's start off the program like this, by reminding us that many years ago, Nigeria had her own shipping line. What happened to it? The story is long. But that story has been cut short now by the current administration because there is a strong desire to establish a national carrier for Nigeria in the maritime sector.
Having identified the need to diversify the Nigerian economy and address the imbalance in the maritime industry, the Honorable Minister of Transportation, Right Honorable Chibuike Amechi, decided to establish a private sector-led Nigerian maritime fleet to participate in the carriage of the country's import and export cargo. This was the genesis of the birth of the National Fleet Implementation Committee, chaired by the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council. Members of the committee were on a working visit to the management of NIMASA, where the agency's Director General Dr. Bashir Jamo received them. He reaffirmed the agency's commitment to the establishment of a strong and sustainable national fleet, saying the desire for a Nigerian shipping line is gradually being achieved.
I am sincerely appreciative and thankful for the wake-up call of the Fleet Expansion Committee in order to ensure that Nigeria reaps all these benefits. On our part, we will do everything possible to ensure that we give the necessary support to ensure that Nigeria gets this benefit for public goods.
Dr. Jamo said that the Nigerian maritime sector had the potential to grow by between 3 and 5% annually due to the size of the local market, but regretted that this capacity remained mostly untapped. He said that since the liquidation of the Nigerian National Shipping Line, NNSL, in 1995, the country had been looking for avenues to float a national carrier through private sector participation.
There's no better time for Nigeria to venture into the issue of fleet expansion other than now. It's no longer a secret that the European Union have taken a stand that come 2030, they will have no business to do with oil. It is high time for us to be up and doing and ensure this fleet expansion reach the climax and we commence operations without further delay.
In his remarks, Committee Chair and Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council, Barrister Hassan Bello, said the committee was at a critical stage of the national's fleet implementation process, stressing that capital injection is required at this juncture to actualize the project.
It is important to state that the quest for development of a sustainable national fleet for Nigeria remains a task that must be achieved for the overall growth and development of our national economy. In order to do this, it is pertinent to provide the required business environment to encourage private sector buy-in and also aim at ensuring that Nigeria regains control over her international trade while also restoring the nation back into her rightful place.
Speaking in support of the leading position taken by NIMASA in the push for a wholly Nigerian-owned, manned and operated fleet, Aminu Umar and Isaac Jolakbamo, both members of the National Fleet Implementation Committee and also prominent ship owners, commended NIMASA for its active role in the fleet implementation process.
We, as operators, I think you will also do more to bring us together so that we can advise correctly rather than wrangling.
DG, this is really something that we can say out of 2020, which has been a very tough year for us. I think this is a singular act that we will say we celebrate 2020 is positive. So,
I mean, this is the engine room of the ocean. You know, everything that drives the ocean drives from NIMASA. And all this while we have been, even though we have a member of the committee coming from NIMASA, we have not had a good opportunity to interact with NIMASA management. And with this the dynamic leadership that you have right now and your board, we feel that it was timely for us to interact with you today. And of course, we have budget issues, and we have the fact that you really need to drive it because everything, you know, starts and ends in NIMASA.
Introducing the new face of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. We are charting the direction for a maritime and regulating the industry for a better, bigger, and more economically stable Nigeria. Evolved to serve you better. We are NIMASA. New face, rejuvenated service. NIMASA, changing the tides in your favor.
With a coastline of 852 kilometers bordering the Atlantic Ocean in the Gulf of Guinea and a maritime area of over 46,000 square kilometers, Nigeria is no doubt a maritime destination. Statistics show that a total freight cost of between $5 and $6 billion is estimated to be generated on export and import businesses annually, while the maritime component of Nigeria's oil and gas industry is worth an estimated $8 billion, alongside seaborne transportation, oceanic extractive resource exploitation, and export processing zones. A virile shipbuilding industry will certainly position Nigeria as a leading global economic force within a decade from now. NIMASA encourages Nigerians to explore and invest in the shipbuilding industry.
Did you hear that? Between $5 billion and $6 billion is generated annually from export and import business. That is a lot of money. You can now understand why NIMASA is very, very keen on encouraging Nigerians to go into shipbuilding, because that is a crucial part of that sector. But then, if you want to be a part of this shipbuilding, it must be done properly. Substandard constructions of vessels could become a big problem to the marine environment in Nigeria.
So the agency has embarked on a nationwide sensitization program known as Operation Stingray to caution those engaged in illegal construction of vessels. Captain Kunle Olayiwola of NIMASA led a team to Port Harcourt in Rivers State, where sites with tugboats, barges, marine vessels, houseboats, and other crafts construction was going on. The team visited Fly Flight Nigeria Limited, Fleet Offshore, El Totuoma, and Belema Oil Hisco Jetty. The message was the same at all the companies, and the agency simply seeks to assist the investors meet acceptable international standards in operating a shipyard.
The purpose of this Operation Stingray is to sensitize the barge and tug operators and manager to know that they need to do things right. And how do they do things right? Like this tug they are building now. This tug requires to have a plan approval. From NIMASA before they start constructing it. Because if they construct this type of a vessel without knowing the weight or the load line, it is dangerous to safety of life and safety of property. We are here to ensure that the ship manager, the tug manager, barge managers, and the crew on board are well certificated. Mostly, the crew must have river master, quartermaster, marine engineering assistant certificate, and able seafarer certificate. So, and also they should have all the mandatory required by flag administration. Our purpose here is to let them know what they have to do right. And this is going to be all over Nigeria. We have done the one in Lagos, and we are extending it to Port Harcourt here.
That was a terrible thing that happened. It's no longer news that the protests that happened in Nigeria got hijacked by hoodlums, and many places in the country suffered some blow, some massive destruction. Lagos had its fair share. The NPA had its share. You saw some pictures there. The destruction was much. A whole wing of the NPA headquarters was actually set on fire. With this in mind, the heads of the maritime agencies in Nigeria paid a visit to the NPA headquarters to show solidarity with the MD of that agency, Mr. Diza Bala Usman.
Well, this is our IC center. Unfortunately, they couldn't get an entrance to this, so we are just lucky. Otherwise, operation would have been disrupted. We thank God they couldn't get them there.
The Nigerian Ports Authority, NPA, is Nigeria's maritime authority that governs and operates the ports in Nigeria. The major ports include Lagos Port Complex and Tin Can Island Port Complex, both in Lagos State, the Calabar Port Complex in Cross River State, the Delta Ports in Warri, Delta State, and the Rivers Port Complex and Onne Port Complex, both in Rivers State. The head office of the Nigerian Ports Authority is located at 26/28 Marina, Lagos, Nigeria. When hoodlums hijacked the peaceful protests in Lagos, the head office of the NPA was one of Nigeria's national assets that came under attack. DG NIMASA Dr. Bashir Jamo, Executive Secretary, Nigeria Shippers Council, Barrister Hassan Bello, Registrar Council for the Regulation of Freight Forwarding in Nigeria, CRFFN, Sam Nwakohu, Esquire, and Rector Maritime Academy of Nigeria MAN, retired Commodore Duja Efedwa, and the Managing Director, NIWA, Chief George Mogalu, converged on the Marina office to see firsthand what has been reported. The GM Corporate Communications NPA, Engineer Jato Adams, made a slide presentation that saw the CEOs shaking their heads in shock.
40% of our computers are gone. Our printers, maybe same amount. TV screens, 78% of the TVs are gone, refrigerators and photocopiers, printers. So we have a dearth in those items, and we're trying to see how we can find ways to recoup and get those items back, to procure them.
Honestly speaking, I never thought that the devastation was of this magnitude. Yeah. It is evidently clear that those who perpetrated this act are pure criminals with clear, sinister intentions, either to steal or to destroy what they cannot steal. That was, for me, that was the agenda.
This is something to do with well planned and well targeted attack. Yes. Only God knows the motive behind it. So I think we have to prepare and think ahead. Because out of all the government agencies, only we have one. What was something must be caught, that question must be asked, and we have to find an answer.
One of the most strict.
Yes, only.
Again, despite setting all these vehicles on fire, the hoodlums went across the road to the authorities' car park, where they destroyed vehicles they could not steal.
This is NIMASA This Week. Well, it might be good to remind you that we've had some court cases involving alleged pirates, some convictions, and so on. All these were made possible by the SPOMO Act 2019. The SPOMO Act is the Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Offences Act of 2019. To shed more light on this and how important it is to Nigeria, we have the legal advisor and secretary to the board of NIMASA, Victor Egejuru, with us on the program. Welcome.
Piracy was provided for under UNCLOS, that is the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, 1982. And also the SOA Convention, that's the Suppression of Unlawful Acts Against Maritime Navigation of 1988, also provides for other maritime offenses. The SPOMO Act is the Suppression of Piracy and Other Maritime Offenses Act of 2019, which was enacted by the National Assembly. This is the first time we are having a standalone legislation on piracy and Other Maritime Offences Act. Before now, resort was made to other legislations, for prosecution of offenders, but actually those proved to be ineffective, and as such, much convictions were not being recorded. So the enactment of the SPOMO Act is actually commendable, and we wish to really commend the National Assembly for enacting this very important law. The SPOMO Act actually defines what piracy is, because that's usually a problem. And if you're talking about piracy, it must be committed in international waters. Other maritime offenses will be committed ordinarily within your internal waters and your territorial waters. Under UNCLOS, state parties to that convention have the right to arrest, detain, prosecute any offender or even ship utilized for piracy in international waters. So the SPOMO Act actually captures this essence of UNCLOS, which means that even though the act has been committed in international waters, for instance, the Gulf of Guinea, which is an international water, the Nigerian security agencies or outfits who are mandated or saddled with the responsibility of enforcing or implementing this act can actually arrest or arrest any vessel that has been involved in such criminal acts, including piracy in international waters. So the act itself defines exactly what piracy is, what constitutes piracy, who a pirate is, where piracy, the act of piracy can be committed, and where the act of other maritime offenses, which are many, including armed robbery at sea, can be committed. And when you talk of prosecution, the act also tells you who has the mandate to prosecute. And in the act, it is the Attorney General of the Federation or officers from his office. But NIMASA, that's the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, can also prosecute offenders, but on one condition: if NIMASA gets a consent from the Attorney General to do so. And the act also provides for what court actually has jurisdiction to try offenders. You may need to know, and this is very important, that the act of piracy now attracts a life sentence, apart from the fines which may be applicable, and even restitution of what has been taken away or destroyed in the process of committing that offense. So it attracts life imprisonment, and so would-be offenders should be wary of this. And the agency, that is NIMASA, is the coordinating body for the implementation of this act. And in implementing the act and in coordinating this implementation, it has a lot to do with capacity building. It has to do with development of a maritime strategy, and of course, collaboration with other agencies of government. The act itself provides that certain other bodies, agencies of government, like the Nigerian Navy, there should be a collaboration between the agency and the Nigerian Navy, amongst others, including the Marine Police. With this act, we have recorded some successes. One, there have been 2 cases instituted, one at the Federal High Court, Lagos, and one in Port Harcourt. For that in Port Harcourt, in fact, there has been conviction of three pirates that have been convicted for this offense under the Act, and that is the first conviction that has been recorded under the Act. The one in Lagos is ongoing, and we believe that if the offenders or the suspects are found culpable, of course they will be convicted under the Act. So my advice to stakeholders and to would-be criminals: for stakeholders, like I said earlier, there is need for collaboration, there is need for intelligence gathering and intelligence sharing. There is need for all relevant stakeholders to put their security equipment together to be able to fight piracy, because piracy is a global challenge and no nation can fight it alone. Nigeria, through NIMASA, has provided, apart from what the Navy also has, Nigeria has provided a lot of equipment for fighting of crimes in our waterways. You may have heard of the Deep Blue project, which is a security project. It has a lot of assets, including air assets, land assets, sea assets, all geared towards fighting piracy. So we have recorded a lot of successes, and it is hoped that with this cooperation which is now going on, and you may also need to know that we are cooperating sufficiently with the Nigerian Navy. The Nigerian Navy had a detachment we call Maritime Guard Command in NIMASA. And with this command, the effective patrolling of our waterways has really come to stay.
Introducing the new face of the Nigerian Maritime Administration and Safety Agency, NIMASA. We are charting the direction for a maritime and regulating the industry for a better, bigger, and more economically stable Nigeria. Evolved to serve you better. We are NIMASA. New face, rejuvenated service. NIMASA. Changing the tides in your favor.
Now let's quickly share the tweet of the DG NIMASA, and this time it was about the visit to the MPA, and he said, #pained. Unthinkable carnage was what I witnessed with my fellow maritime agencies CEOs earlier today when we paid a solidarity visit to Hadiza Bala Usman, MD NPA, over the recent fire attack on the NPA headquarters in Lagos. We must protect our maritime assets to grow our economy. It was definitely a painful visit, and we hope that that wouldn't happen in the country again, because together we have to work to make the nation work. We have to go now, but we'll be back next week, all things being equal. Do remember you could follow the DG NIMASA on Twitter. He's at Jamo Bashir. He's interactive. You could ask questions. He would answer. The schedule can be busy, but at the right time, he would answer. And also NIMASA, you could follow on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. They are all at NIMASA Official. At NIMASA Official. You could also visit the website of NIMASA to get to know more about the maritime sector. Till I come your way again, take care of yourselves, my friends. And remember, let's protect our nation. She's the only one we've got. My name is Cordelia Obey. Bye-bye.
This is NT